Welcome, craft beer friends, to Season 8, Episode 7 of Tap to Craft Podcast. I am Danny Lewis, coming to you from Boise, Idaho, and my partner in craft, the dog whisperer, and my favorite Florida man, also known as Drinking Eagle, from Tampa, Florida, Mr. Chris McKenzie. How you doing tonight, Chris, and what is in your glass?
So, Denny, if what we did wasn't so much fun, I'd totally be sleeping right now.
Oh, wow. Wow. That means you had a good weekend, huh?
It was a good weekend. We celebrated Denny is the Gandalf of craft beer. Okay, yeah. Dan Charlie, you were absolutely right.
Well, it's a young Gandalf until December time frame when his beard grows back up.
Growing, then it's really gonna kick in. But yeah, we had Manny's birthday. This was yesterday, and he wanted to go to Walt Disney World for what used to be called Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween Party. So it's basically you get to go trick-or-treating at Disney. So that's what we ended up doing yesterday. But we left here in Tampa. We left Tampa at about 5 p.m. on Saturday, and between the five of us, Dan said he had PTSD when you shaved. Between the five of us, we had a mini vacation over at Disney. Good. Spent the evening Saturday, grabbed dinner, sat by the fire pit, had some beers. Saturday or Sunday during the day, we hung out by the pool, had a couple more beers. Nice. And then last night we went to Disney, did some trick-or-treating, rode a bunch of rides, and we drove home this morning after breakfast. So it was a lot of fun. But in my glass today, I'm drinking something that I haven't grabbed a hold of in a long time. And I am doing really good to answer your second question, but I'm having a triple Philosophers or three Philosophers from Brewery Ommegang. And I saw this on the shelf when I went to pick up some beers that I hadn't had it in such a long time, and I don't remember liking it as much. How many years ago? That was probably also in the same time where I said I don't really like Belgian beers. And it wasn't so good, but I'm enjoying it now, and I'm glad I went back to it because I got a second beer that was on my list of beers I had a long time ago that I didn't like at the time, that I'm really curious to see how it turns out. Was it Brother Thelonious? Oh,
that's an awesome beer from North Coast.
Yeah. And I was given that, I don't know, probably right around the same time I started my Untapped account, which was 2015. And it was not a good entry beer for craft beer for me, but
yeah, it's a big flavored, strong beer that would definitely throw you off if you weren't expecting it.
Yeah.
Did you get a 25-ounce bottle or a smaller one?
I got a small bottle because I was at Total Wine and More, and I had to do some beer shopping because we were getting low before the weekend. And there's a couple of beers that I want to have just a side conversation about here in just a second, or maybe a few minutes into the show. But I want to know what's in your glass, Denny, and how are you doing today?
I am doing well. You're probably going to hear me maybe have some phlegm flare-ups because I'm getting over a head cold. A week ago, I went to the pumpkin patch, the annual pumpkin patch with my grandson, and the wind was blowing so bad that, it was like wind and dust and hay in my face. The next day, I in the middle of the night, the next morning, I woke up with a massive migraine from my head, just like stuffed up, like hard, nasty. And it went from that to start to drain and then just kind of stuck around, and my face was all like messed up. I'm finally feeling better. Like today is the first day in a week that I felt like my face isn't on fire and I'm not too stuffed up. But you know how when you get done with a head cold or a sinus infection or whatever, and then you have that last little bit between your nose and your throat, and the phlegm is like hard and kind of like it's stuck between there, and you feel like you're going to blow bubbles of, hard snot out of your nose. That's what I feel like right now. So if I do have a moment where I need to cough up a little bit, I apologize ahead of time, and maybe you can hear a little bit of, I sound much better now than I did even yesterday. Sarah's like, wow, you sound so much better today. I was like, yeah, I got to record.
Yeah.
I got to sound good, right? I can't be sounding too stuffed up. But yeah, but I'm doing much better because I feel normal today, somewhat normal. So that's good. And what is in my glass? Last recording, I was drinking some Boneyard beer, and I'm drinking some more Boneyard beer. This one is the incredible Pulp Blood Orange Extra Pale Ale. And look at that artwork there, right? That hop is just beefed out.
I like
the
that.
Incredible hop right there. Incredible Pulp.
Oh, what's on his hat?
It's skull and crossbones.
Oh, okay. That's what I thought it was, but I couldn't
see that. Yeah, it's kind of hard to see, but yeah, skull and crossbones. And he's just crushing a blood orange, half of a blood orange in there. And let me tell you, this is a fantastic implementation of adding an adjunct, especially like blood orange. I love a blood orange, but sometimes these things can come across way too fruity or too much, it's too much. And what's nice about this beer is it's a solid pale ale. Right up front, you get the malty base. You feel like you're drinking a malty beer. It eases into the orange from the blood orange, but it's not overly overbearing. It's not heavy, not sticky, and definitely not cloying. And then in the end, it like blends back into the hop character, and it's almost like fluent from malt, blood orange, like juicy character, to hop citrus character in the finish. Really well done. I mean, blended so well. I love this beer, and now I get it here distributed in 6-pack. So I've got myself a 6-pack. I'm drinking one of these. I got an RPM that I drank in the last episode, and I've got a Oktoberfest. I bought a case of Sierra Nevada's Oktoberfest. That right now is my favorite Oktoberfest this season. I think that's a fantastic beer, and I just been drinking a lot of it. So I'll probably throw that in between the this one and the regular West Coast IPA, the RPM from.
Yeah, I went searching for that the other day.
Really?
Couldn't find it.
You think Boneyard comes to town?
No, not Boneyard. I mean the Sierra Nevada.
Oh, Sierra Nevada.
Yeah, I could not find it to save my life. And I decided I have a couple of beers with me today. One's an Oktoberfest style beer that comes locally from a brewery called Green Bench over in St. Petersburg. And I bought a couple other ones. One was from Florida Avenue Brewing, which is here. It's called Super Martin Brothers. So it had a very Super Mario Brothers kind of look to the outside of it. And then I also grabbed a hold of that Snyder's pretzel beer too. And I had the first one, and I even think I commented on it when I checked it in on Untappd, and I was like, oh, I get it. It's definitely some caramel notes, and you get some of that bready, crackery flavors, and there's even a little bit of salt in there too. And I got to say, I'm completely even more disappointed with it now, because it is not a beer. It is a malt beverage with natural flavors.
You know what? That's disappointing. That's what I was afraid of when we read about it from one of our listeners. Is I was afraid it was going to be just added stuff into it and not really, utilizing. If they would have made it so that all the ingredients they used came across like had a pretzel in there, it'd be fantastic. I think that'd be really well done.
Yeah. And then, of course, one of the beers that I did get, it's starting to taste kind of oxidized, even though it's under 60 days old. I'm kind of disappointed that it turned out the way that it did. So, living and learning, I suppose.
That's all you can do. Live and learn.
Got to try them to find out.
All right, Chris. Well, hey, let's get this show started. But before we get too far in, I always want to let anyone new who's just joining us for the first time what Tap to Craft podcast is all about. We are an educational podcast. We focus around celebrating all things craft beer because we want to assist you, our listeners, along in your craft beer journeys and adventures. And you're listening to episode 189, recording on Monday, October 18th, 2021. And we are live on Facebook. We will be interacting throughout the show with our listeners who are watching along with us. And if you want to be like our other great listeners and be a part of the show, and watch this thing be made, join us every Monday before release on Facebook at 6:30 Mountain Time, 8:30 Eastern Time. And just join, watch, and comment, and we will chat with you on air. You'll hear those conversations going on as we record. And in this episode, it's going to be, we mentioned, we kind of hinted at the fact that maybe we'll talk about the Great American Beer Fest awards. Did that make it in, Chris? Okay, no, we are not going to talk about it. I mentioned, Idaho didn't win any awards. So I'm like boycotting the GABF medals this year. But Chris wanted to talk about it, but I guess he decided, screw it.
It was too much of a scramble at the last minute. I mean, I could probably pull up the info and do it on the fly, but like I said, I want to see how much time we have.
We'll play it by ear. We'll play it by ear, but we will be talking to you about actually, let me just say this. This episode is brought to you by the letter A, where we'll be discussing our favorite breweries and beers, beginning with the letter A. And this was brought to us by our good listener, Jeff Seiler, who always has great advice for the show. And he said, hey, you guys have 26 options, and actually more if we add numbers, right? We might have one we do a favorite numbered brewery, because I found out there's a lot of breweries that have a number at starting of their name. So we could always pick our favorite numbered brewery as well. But at least 26, maybe 27 different categories of beers and breweries we can talk about. So we're going to talk about our favorite letter A breweries and beers, as well as great conversation that Chris and I will have along the way. And Chris and I just want to thank all of our Patreon supporters. This episode is brought to you in part by our satisfied Patreon supporters like Mike Allen, William Slimmer, and Amanda and Kevin Argauer, who are our virtual producers, and Tom Byrne, Jeff Seiler, Johan Halberg, Tara Carlson, Chad Lamassa, Mark Church, Matt Knight, and Eric Gronley, who want to buy us a virtual beer. And if you enjoy the content we provide, we invite you to support the show by toasting your host, or buying us a virtual beer, or even becoming a virtual producer. You can explore the options on our support page by visiting patreon.com/tapthecraft. Okay, well now, guess what, Chris? We put out the call last episode to have our listeners go ahead and send us voicemails, and you would be entered in to winning our last Brewer Shirts gift card, $20 gift card.
Yep.
And we only had one taker. Mr. Mike Allen decided he was going to. Now, I don't even know if he knew the contest was going on. He may have just decided to call us because he wanted to call us. And so now we're going to hear what Mike Allen has to say as soon as I turn my volume. This time I'm going to be smart and turn the volume up.
Okay. I was going to ask you, do you need me to pull it up and just share the sound, or you want to do it through your phone?
Wait, you can pull it up? You have to. You don't have access to it, though, I don't think.
No, I don't think Mike said he forgot, actually.
Okay, hold on. Let me.
Hey guys, it's Mike Allen. Hey, just wanted to check in with you. I am currently at the Burn Pile Beer Fest in Asheville, hosted by Burial. I gotta say, guys, this is one of the best beer fests I have ever been to, and I've been to a lot of them. They have got some of the best breweries from all over the country. Trillium, Burial itself, obviously, Monkish, Alvarado Street, just amazing breweries here, live music, just having a great time, having some amazing beers, several like 4.5, 4.75s, 5.0s, from everything I've had here. So anyway, just want to check with you guys, let you know that having a great time, and appreciate the great show. Listen to the last show on home brewing on the way up, on the drive up here from Atlanta. So wish you guys well on the next show. I'll catch you later. Thanks. Bye.
Well, there you go. That's all you have to do. Send a quick little voicemail like that. You guys can do it. It's not that hard. And look how great Mike sounded. You guys all heard that, right?
I mean, I did. I heard it.
Yeah. So thank you, Mike. I appreciate you sending us a voicemail. And it was great that you've been hitting a lot of festivals. I mean, you went to Reno and went to a festival, and now you're in North Carolina going to a festival. And I've been a little, hesitant to go to the festivals, although I did go to a festival this weekend. And I might as well talk about it now, right? Because Mike talked about a festival. Yeah. I went to the I think it's like the sixth annual. Actually, it might be the fifth because last year it got canceled. So I'll say fifth annual Boise Brewing Hoptober Festival. And it's a tongue full because it's a lot of play on words there, but it's basically the fresh hop festival that they have every year, where they bring in breweries, a lot of local breweries, because here in Idaho we do have a lot of hops, so it's very easy to get fresh hops right from the hop farm, bring it in and put it in your brew kettle and make some nice beers, as well as getting a lot of breweries typically from Oregon and Washington area that also have an opportunity to have a lot of fresh hop beer. So I'm swimming in fresh hop beers. I've drank a lot of fresh hop beers in the last few weeks. And I'll be honest with you, it's a little disappointing because almost all the beers coming out of Washington State that are using Washington hops have been really affected greatly by the wildfires that we've been having. And we've had wildfires every year, but it just doesn't seem like this was really bad. It must have been a really bad in the Yakima Valley area, because the beers had a distinct hop or fire, smoky, ashy character in the beer itself, in the flavor. Mostly just in the flavor, not necessarily in the aroma. I did have one, and again, I was very disappointed because I got this before I realized how bad the smokiness was. I had already bought a bunch of Washington fresh hop beers, and I bought one from two breweries that I love in Washington, Varietal, which I've talked about many times, and Lumberbeard. They did a collab on a fresh hop beer. So I'm thinking, man, two of my favorite Washington breweries that make really good hop forward, IPAs, West Coast hazies, whatever. Everything I've had from them has been fantastic. I thought, this is going to be a great beer. You know what? The beer was good, except for one thing. Not only did the flavor have a very distinct smokiness to it, but the aroma was also very smoky. So that was the only one I had both aroma and flavor that just was like overwhelming, ashtray-ish type character. So it's probably the lowest. I think I gave it a 3.5 cap rating because it still was a good beer. It just was tainted by the smoke, and that disappointed me. The lowest beer rating I've ever done for any of those two breweries, but it was basically because the beer wasn't good. But Fremont Brewing stuff, same thing. Almost all their beers, even the ones that they actually made, I think they made the Cowicky Canyon beer, and then I think they trashed it and then brought some more hops after they washed them off. Even that one suffered from the smoke flavor, which just took it away from me. The only one that didn't have the smoky flavor was the fresh to ferment. I think that's what it's called. It's their normal. They usually do multiple different varieties: Citra, Mosaic, Centennial. They Cascade. They'd have like at one point they had 4 different fresh hop varieties in this beer. This time they just did a combination of like a bunch of hops. Instead of doing one, they did Citra, Mosaic, and something else in one beer. And that one, surprisingly enough, didn't have the smokiness, but it didn't have a bold fresh hop flavor either. So I was kind of disappointed in that one. And still, it's amazing. The best fresh hop beer I've had this year was the first one I had of all year, and that was Fort George Fresh IPA. Out of about 20 fresh hop beers I've had, that still is my favorite this year. So yeah, so I went to this festival, and because it was, so here's the deal. I'm not used to this new world order with the COVID, right? So I show up, I have Sarah come and drop me off. I was meeting my buddy Alex Fuchs, who was here from Israel. He came for a bunch of meetings during the week, and he stayed on over Saturday so we can go to this festival and hang out. I meet him down there, and I go into the front gate to get in, and it says you have to have proof of vaccination or proof of a clear test in the last day. And I'm like, oh crap, I don't have proof on me. I didn't bring my card with me, and I have to deal with that with work. So I have all that stuff on my work phone, which I didn't bring my work phone with me. I brought my personal phone. So I'm trying to find my card. I didn't have a photocopy. They say, oh, if this photocopy is fine. I find my negative, 'cause every week I have to take a test for work. So I went to the website. Oh, I have that, but there's nothing that shows my name with my test results. It just shows my test results. So I'm like, well, that's not going to fly. So I'm going to drive all the way back home, get my damn Vax card and drive back. I just wasn't expecting that. I just didn't think ahead that that's the kind of world we're living in now. And that's the first festival I've been to since COVID started. So that was kind of a little bit of drag too. Have you haven't gone to what kind of festivals are going on in the Tampa area? Is there anything going on? Nothing?
No, there's I guess the biggest things going on right now are hockey season starting back up, baseball season's winding down, football season's winding up, and I mean I know we just had like an Oktoberfest kind of thing down on the river in downtown Tampa, but as far as beer festivals go, there's really nothing. And there is one coming up soon, probably within the next 30 to 60 days, called the Badass Brew Fest, which is put on by Tampa Bay Beer Works. And I've gone to it a couple times. It's always been a really good event, always really good beers. And that's really the only one that I know of here coming up, other than probably Hunapoo Day in March.
Okay. Is that going to happen this year, you think?
I sure hope so.
Okay.
Because I like the way they shifted it the last time they had it. It wasn't outside at a park. It was inside at Amalie Arena where the Lightning play. So it was in an air conditioned, and it was at night. It wasn't on a Saturday morning where you go pound down breakfast at 9-10 o'clock and then you get in and you start day drinking and you're absolutely wasted by 1 o'clock in the afternoon. No, it's in the evening on a Saturday, so you can keep it classy.
Nice. Yeah. So honestly, it was a lot more subdued. The festival usually has like 60, like 40. I mean, a lot of breweries, like 45 to 60 breweries, a lot of beers. This time they kept it. It was down. There was supposed to be 30 breweries, and I think honestly there was only 25 maybe. And each brewery brought one fresh hop beers and some brought two, but most of them brought one fresh hop and then one other beer. So there really was only about 12 fresh hop beers, 12 to 14 maybe fresh hop beers. A little bit sad, and most of those were ones I could already get without coming to the festival. So I went and drank some of the ones that we did have. Some brewery out of Bend, Oregon, Good Life Brewing. They brought one of theirs, and that was enjoyable. A little different, like a lighter, refreshing ale that utilized the hop very nice, and very refreshing, like a great lawnmower type beer that wasn't too heavy but it had a nice flavor. Another one out of Oregon, from Salem, Oregon, Gilgamesh. They did a really nice fresh hop beer, and I can't remember the name of it right now, but that was pretty decent. It was a little bit heavier, but had a little different flavor profile. And then Fremont Brewing brought two fresh hop beers with them. I think those are the ones that were out of state. I'm trying to think of anything. Everything else was within the state. And again, like I said, things that I can normally get around town. So it wasn't anything too special. But I did try my first Spring Creek beer. The Spring Creek is a brewery that opened up outside of town in a subdivision in the hills outside, on the way out of Boise going towards the mountains. And I just haven't gone out there because I haven't gone that direction. And it's like a 45-minute drive for me to get out there, maybe about 45 minutes. So I just haven't gone out there. I want to do that with Alex one day, go try their beers. But they did bring some beers, and I did have, I really enjoyed their double IPA. It was called Sweet Cascadian double IPA. And this was a 10.4% beer, which is really big for a double IPA and fresh hop. But I'll tell you what, it was pretty well balanced, and I couldn't tell it was 10.4%. A really good job, and the hop flavor was really good. I really enjoyed that one. I went back, had that twice because that was one I thought was worth spending another ticket on. The other thing is that I think if you remember, I've gone to this festival every year since it's been put on, And the very first year they did it, I think if you go back and listen to the show in 2015, it was September of 2015, sometime, one of those shows, maybe October of 2015. You'll find my first festival I went to. They charged like $35, and you got 20 tickets of these glasses that are this size. If you're watching, it's I think it's a 4-ounce pour, 20. And
Wow.
I could only get through 15 before I had to stop, because the beers back then, especially in 2015, everything was about big beers, right? So it was a lot of double IPAs, a lot of big, heavy beers. And when you get through 15 4-ounce pours of a 9% IPA or double IPA, you start to feel it pretty quick. And so I gave away 5 of my tickets. I said, wow, this is way too many tickets. They should have something, maybe do 10 for a cheaper price. It's moved from that to now it's $3.50 a ticket. So $3.50 for a third of a pint of beer.
Okay.
For a beer that I can buy $4.50 in the store. So a little bit ridiculously priced. So it went from one extreme to the other, where you gave way too much to now you pay an arm and a leg to go in. So it's, it's a little bit expensive, but still it's nice to get out there. And again, my first beer festival during COVID.
I'd love to go to one.
Okay, I think I rambled on about that long enough, but hey, I want to talk about it somewhere in the show, and I thought, why not just talk about it when Mike Allen got talking about it? So we did that. But if you would like to be like Mike and contact the show, leaving your voicemail, you can do that very easily. Just call us at 208-536-3359, or if it's easier for you to remember, 208-53-ODDLY. Yeah,
I want to be like Mike.
You want to be like Mike?
I want to be like Mike.
But if you are a little shy and don't want to get your voice on the air, you
do
can
it anyway.
You can leave us an email with your comments or questions. Just do it. Just send it to tapthecraft@gmail.com. Or if you're more into social media, we can be found on Twitter and Instagram at tapthecraft, and also on Facebook at tapthecraft. Just facebook.com/tapthecraft. However social you like to do it, just leave us your comments, questions. Let your voice be heard. All right, Chris, let's continue the conversation, because now it's time to untap the craft and see what our listeners are drinking according to Untapped.
Well, I think my biggest decision right now is, do I go with this Fest beer lager from Green Bench, or do I get really basic and have this Gourd's Gone Wild from Tampa Bay Brewing Company?
Go with the maybe that's hard. That's a hard choice, because you go big now and then short later, maybe
6%, 5.8%. Just this is a 16-ounce can. This one's 12.
Yeah.
So
okay.
I mean, really, no real big difference other than actually, no. Alcohol by volume, you should be getting technically the same thing. If you want to look at it that way.
No, because it's by okay. You're right, because by 12-ounce cans. So you're right. If they're equating it the same, I don't know how. That's a good question on how they do that. Are they weighing? Because what if you serve it in a 16-ounce can?
Mm-hmm.
But it's 12 ounces calculated.
My guess, and John, correct me if I'm wrong when you hear this in 3 months. My idea is that it's based on the actual total amount made. So if they make, 100 barrel batch, it should be a 6%. It should have 6% alcohol in it based on the volume. So when you put, I don't know. Yeah, I guess because it's more quantity. I mean, this would technically have more alcohol in it.
Yeah.
But
I think because it's based off of 12-ounce. We did a whole show on how they calculated. It was so long ago. I need to refresh my memory on how they calculate. But it's based off of a 12-ounce can of beer, like one, whatever.
Okay.
And then in the shot was like 1.5 ounces of distilled liquor. I mean, each one had and 6 ounces of of wine. They had their measurement and then what that calculated to if you were to do the whole calculation.
Well, I went with the pumpkin beer. Mike Allen said, I think we've talked about this before, but all the festivals I've ever been to, I've never been to one with tickets. Everyone is always all you can drink with entry. So I've kind of done both. Denny, you guys normally have tickets in your festival, right? Mm-hmm. So Mike, I've been to both, and I don't know if, so from what I understand with Denny, and just because he's such a solid guy, Denny always makes sure he forces his ticket into the hand of the person serving him that beer. Now, me on the other hand, I've got him in my pocket, but I'll say, hey, can I get a pour of this? And they'll go, yeah, sure. And they'll pour it. They'll never ask you for a ticket. So I just go and go and go until somebody goes, oh, hey, don't forget to throw your ticket in the pitcher and throw the ticket in there. But yeah, I've done both where it's all you can drink or you need to drop a ticket. And I don't know. I've never run out of tickets. I actually end up giving tickets away or people give me tickets or they don't take the tickets or I don't know.
Yeah. I could have easily done that, but I don't know. I just don't like to cheat. I think so many people do cheat that's why the tickets are so expensive, right? They have to make up the difference because they know it's not, people aren't going to put their ticket in, but I don't know. I make a point to do it because I want to do the right thing.
Well, Dan Charlie also said that Civil Society is having their 6-year anniversary on November 20th. So there's still tickets available for that. If you go through the Ozner app, OZNR,
you should go to that.
Yeah.
Civil Society is great. I love their beers.
Now the question is do I go by myself or do I be the good husband and take Megan with me? Or do I just go by myself to have like a boys' weekend? Because Dan Charlie said all the cool kids are going to be there. So that probably means Joel and Tim are going and Dan's staying at home, right?
Well, you know what? You could go stag and just go join the boys. The boys.
So it's a
reality boys.
That's a 3-hour ride down there too.
Okay, so take Megan and do a date night weekend.
So many choices.
Yeah. It's a win-win no matter what.
Okay. Well, maybe we'll just. I got invited to go. We'll see where it goes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So anyway, we got to get into this Untapped thing because we are getting sidetracked. Our first one's going to come in from the Gnarly Gnome, and he's been checking into a few things as well. We still really need to talk to him. But he's checked into 2 beers by Cartridge Brewing. He's drinking a Sherman and a Panzer. And the first check-in, it was just delayed, not because I didn't enjoy it, but he left some notes about it. Excellent beer to sip with dinner was the Sherman, and then the Panzer was excellent fest beer. I'm late getting it checked in, but really enjoyed this a lot. Crisp and drinkable, but loaded up with toasty, biscuity flavors. Could drink a ton of this. Next on the list is going to be David Martin. He's drinking a Dragon Saddle by Hoof-Hearted Brewing. 4.5 cap rating for that beer with no notes. David was also drinking a vanilla pear sour, which again, that pear flavor, very subtle. Don't ruin it. Vanilla pear sour by Columbia Craft Brewing Company, 4.25 caps. What is that? Oh, RPM.
Boneyard beer. I'm going with the other IPA, then I'll go for Oktoberfest.
Okay. So we've got that one. I got to move this screen over so I'm not confusing myself. Moving on up the list, Florida Steve. Here's that check-in you were talking about. He was I asked everybody what people were drinking, and Florida Steve said he was drinking his own cider that he called Applicious Apple Cider by Korsman Cider and Barrel Works. Cider is ready for consumption. I even created a check-in for anyone that happens to have my first creation. Cheers, everyone. He gave himself a 3.5 cap rating for his cider. Matt Helmer asked, is that the new Cartridge Brewing in Ohio? My guess is yes, because that's
it's when you checked into. Okay, never mind.
Okay.
Yeah, I was thinking he was singing my thing. Okay.
Mainville, Ohio. Matt is where Cartridge is. And then jumping back up the list to Leon Nault. He's here in the Tampa area. He's drinking a daily serving of mango and passion fruit by Trillium Brewing Company. And he gave that one 4 1/4 caps for that beer. Scrolling on up the list. Well, Matt, when you go there, make sure you tell us about it. Leave us a voicemail.
Leave us a voicemail.
208-53 oddly. Yeah, it's easy enough to remember. Jim Kudzall is drinking a Nitro Coconut Truffle by Southern Tier Brewing Company. I always love Jim's notes because they're so super detailed, because he gave this one a 4 1/2 cap rating. Natural coconut and chocolate added to this Imperial Milk Stout. Starts off sweet, but finishes with a pleasant bitterness. Just the right amount of coconut flavor throughout. A nice sipper at 10% ABV. That sounds like a delicious dessert almost.
Dessert beer, yeah.
Yeah. Mike Allen, buddy, you've been checking into a ton of beers at where else but other than the Taco Mac.
Taco Mac.
Yeah. I actually had to, since we moved, I had to create my own check-in place, which is the Canine beer cooler. And I was smart enough to label it as a strip club. So,
well, it's probably true, right?
I mean, I guess I did take a shower earlier, so anyway, he had some good stuff in there by 21st Amendment. Their Brew Free or Die. I believe that Brew Free or Die is their watermelon wheat.
Well, they have a few.
Oh no, it's just the IPA.
Yeah, they have a few Brew Free. Oh yeah, Brew Free or Die is the IPA. Yeah, the watermelon one's called something else. Yeah, you're right.
High watermelon. Hell or high watermelon. There we go.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's got a couple of check-ins from 21st Amendment, Wild Leap, and Tantrum Brewing Company. His best one out of all that is the Alpha Abstration Volume 18 by Wild Leap Brew Company. 4 1/4 caps for that beer. This is a beer that Denny, you and I both got. I didn't get tagged in it. Never mind.
Oh.
But I'm going to read it. No,
what did I get tagged in?
Jeff Seiler is drinking a Death to Fresh by Edmunds Oast Brewing Company. Great brewery, by the way. I had some beer from them 2 days ago.
Okay.
A delicious, citrusy, and crushable fresh hop IPA from this Charleston, South Carolina brewery. I love fresh hops, and I cannot lie.
So where did they fly? Did they fly those in, or is?
I don't know.
North Carolina also has some hop fields. That seems way too humid, and I don't know. It seems odd that would be hop central. But
we never really know until we start asking questions. But I don't know. We'll have to tag them on Facebook and say Edmunds Oast Brewing Company. Where'd
you get those hops?
Where'd you get those hops? Where did you get your fresh hops?
You still have to go to that hop field outside of Tampa. So don't forget, that's homework. A tour of the hop fields.
I have not found anybody who can put me in touch with anyone at that place yet.
The Yellow Pages, man.
I'm just going to show up. You know what? To hell with it. I'll fly my drone over it and I'll just narrate something.
Okay.
But 4 1/4 caps for that Death to Fresh from Edmunds Oast. Denny, you checked into a beer from Revision, the Revision Red.
Earlier today, yeah.
Yeah, it's a clean, mellow red ale with some nutty malt flavor. A great gateway beer for those new to craft. 3 1/2 caps for them.
Yeah. Let me just quickly. I gave it a lower rating because I don't know. I was expecting more flavor from it, especially after seeing Tom Byrne rate it very high, and a couple other people on my friends list rate it higher. I was thinking, I'm expecting to have a really fantastic malt flavor in this beer. And maybe a little bit of finishing hops that might just not make it a hoppy red, but a nice blended one. And it was nice, but I couldn't taste any hops that were like prominent in there. What I tasted is what I explained. A very subtle malt, rich. It was a subtle, rich malt character, but it was mostly nutty malt, like a nutty character, but not like strong. It was just kind of mellow. It's a good beer, and I think it's a really good beer for people that don't want to have something too extreme when they come into craft beer. So it was a good beer. Just for my rank on a red ale, it's about 3.5. That's why I gave it a 3.5.
Well, that would also lead us as a great segue into Jeff Seiler's next beer that Eric Gronley commented, that's what everyone wants at their core. Jeff Seiler is drinking a beer by the Divine Barrel or by Divine Barrel Brewing called Beer Flavored Beer. That's it. That's the one, right? From the notes on the front of the can, it looks like an American style lager. And Jeff simply says it's beer. It's beer flavored beer. For tasting notes, please refer to the label. 3 3/4 caps for that beer.
It's beer.
And look, I can't argue with him on that one. That's really what I'm always looking for, right? That beer flavored beer, not beer flavored malt liquor, freaking Niter fucking.
It's not even beer flavored malt liquor.
No, and that was the bad part about it. That's what irritated me. I was enjoying it, and I was like, oh, let's enjoy. Look at the can and the can art, malt flavored beverage. What the hell? And immediately it tasted bad after that. I couldn't. I finished it. I've got 2 more cans, and
you didn't realize you were drinking a seltzer. That's the problem.
Maybe that's what it is. I felt betrayed. Not only me personally, but my taste buds also felt betrayed. Yeah, and I was disappointed, man. I was really looking forward to just all right. I mean, what's more iconic than a fest type beer, a Martzen, an Oktoberfest type beer, and with pretzels.
Yeah.
And you guys make malt beverages out of it. Shame. Chad Lamassa is continuing his check-in streak for the really large number in a row. He's drinking a Requests and Dedications by Pipe the Side Brewing Company. And he writes, this was put in a crowler on October 1st. Today is October 18th. There's still a ton of hops in this, right up there with Nugget Nectar on the bitterness. And that is my favorite beer. I love this. 5 cap rating for that beer.
Yeah, I saw him checking into that one. Yeah, 5 cap is good.
And we'll have to click toast to make sure that, yep, there we go. Tara Carlson. See, I got tagged in this one.
Okay, good.
Tara, she takes care of me. She cares about me. She's drinking a Gretel by Foundation Brewing Company, enjoying the fall with the first fire and an Oktoberfest beer, 3 3/4 caps for that beer. And that sounds like a beer that's just perfect for bonfire weather. Just an Oktoberfest type beer. It's called Gretel. I mean, again, you can't really. It's inspired by a tradition of Oktoberfest beers, balancing rich malt and crisp finish. It's brewed to celebrate the good times. Prost. So that's pretty much what I'm looking for. Still surprised, though, that I cannot find Sierra Nevada Oktoberfest. Let's see. Matt Knight is drinking a Bohemian Pilsner by Von Trapp Brewing. And he writes simply, it's just really tasty. 4 1/4 cap rating for that beer. I'm going to hit refresh on my screen because other people have checked into some things and we got tagged in one of them. William Schlemmer is drinking a Legitimate Business by Company Brewing. And 4 cap rating for this beer. He writes, The Weird Turn Pro Volume 9 from Company Brewing. The beer is growing on me as it warms up. So Legitimate Business, it's kind of hard to tell what it is in the actual picture, but it's a double IPA, double or an Imperial double New England IPA. I can't speak today. You guys know what I meant. And next last on the list, Mark Connor is drinking a Euro Dark Lager by Wind Shift Brewing. Nose is malty and slightly sweet. Taste is light sweetness, malty roast, and a bread finish. Nice. 4 cap rating for that beer.
Sounds good.
I'm going to hit refresh one more time just to make sure. Denny, that's what everybody's drinking.
Well, that's a great bunch of beers right there. A good variety and ending on a nice dark lager. I can appreciate that. That's fantastic. Okay, well, good. Thank you guys for helping us make some content here with and comment on all the beers you're drinking. We really I enjoy this segment, so it's good to do that. But now it's time for the Brew Buzz, and the Brew Buzz is devoted to discussing various beer-related topics. And this week, we will be discussing our favorite letter A breweries, because this episode is brought to you by the letter A. So, Chris, since you just got done chatting away, I'll go ahead and start with my letter A brewery that I want to talk about. And anyone who's listened to this show over the 8 years that we've been doing it knows that I have a love for this brewery. And if anyone on our Facebook that can guess what it is, before I say it in about 1 second, please chime in the text, because I'll be curious if you guys guessed it. But I'm talking about Ommegang Beer Company. And Ommegang Beer Company is out of Alameda, California. Now they're now out of Alameda, California, because they opened a big tap room and production facility there in Alameda. But before, they were kind of co-brewing in San Jose area, I believe, and borrowing some stuff when they can, and until they can earn enough money to go out and build their own place. But I thought of all the different, and there's a lot of A breweries that are part of the 8,000 breweries. There's a lot of breweries over there, and I have this one, and I have two that I'll just talk briefly that I honorable mentions, and I was thinking that when I saw your list, Chris, that you would have different ones than you chose. So I was shocked, and we'll talk about that when we get to your list. But I'm going to talk about Ommegang, and I'm going to go ahead and just read through some of the background history of the brewery and how they got started and what they're all about. So right off the bat, they have a quote on their website. It says, "We brew bold and innovative beers inspired by California's rich pioneering and agricultural traditions." And this is a key, because a lot of their beers are basically field to farm, or farm to ferment,
farm to table, farm to barrel, farm to fermenter,
whatever you want to call it. They use a lot of farm fresh, local what's the word?
Local ingredients, right?
Local ingredients, but
ingredients
like pure, like when you when you get local stuff, not curate, but what's the word I'm looking of?
Geez, I don't even know.
I don't know, but
I know what you're talking about.
They go out and they seek out local ingredients to put in their beers, and that was from the very as we read through this, you'll see that was from the very beginning of their existence. So it's all about getting out there and getting those fresh ingredients. So procure. That's what I was trying. Yeah, it's amazing. I couldn't think of one simple word of procure. That's what I was trying to think of. All right. Ommegang was founded in 2011 by Damian Fagan and Jesse Friedman, two avid homebrewers who bonded over a mutual appreciation for California farmers markets. Ommegang, which refers to the Farmer's Almanac, which is a seasonality reference guide for farmers that has been published every year in the U.S. since 1818. Again, at my age, I'm hoping everyone my age knows what a Farmer's Almanac is, but I'm guessing maybe some of the newer beer drinkers maybe never really knew what the Farmer's Almanac, because they probably stopped teaching about Farmer's Almanac at a certain time. So
look, you can buy it in the grocery store when you're checking out.
Of course. But it's just it's records of trends and things that happen, mostly with weather, rain and weather and stuff in different areas, that can help farmers predict how the growing season is going to be and what they're going to be able to produce. So it's Farmer's Almanac. They set out to brew beers inspired by California's rich agricultural bounty, and brewed their first beer named Summer 2010, which was a bottle-conditioned Belgian-style golden ale aged in Sonoma Zinfandel barrels with Sonoma blackberries. It's a lot of stuff going on there, right?
So,
you got wine barrels, and blackberries, and a Belgian golden ale, which is, something that's not brewed a lot, right? And with all these things added, so it's quite a concoction there. They hand sold their first batch, one case at a time, out of the trunks of their cars to local bars and restaurants in the Bay Area. Woo. Burping up this IPA. The beer was so well received that they continued brewing and releasing quarterly beers for the next 2 years until they garnered enough support to quit their day jobs and pursue Almanac full-time in 2013. After nearly 7 years of partner brewing, they moved into their very own 30,000 square foot production and aging facility located on the historic Naval Air Base on Alameda Island in San Francisco Bay. The brewery is a former naval hangar originally constructed in 1942 that boasts 37-foot ceilings, exposed original redwood beams, and hundreds of oak barrels and foeders. Their new home allowed them the capability of greatly expand their product offerings. Their broad portfolio of beers spans the gamut from delicate oak-aged lagers to nuanced barrel-aged sours, decadent stouts, and of course, hazy IPAs. The company's business strategy suggests that beer can be priced, aged, marketed, released in limited quantities, and consumed like wine. Debuting a $20 bottle in late 2011, that's their first beer. $20 for a wine-sized bottle of beer. Almanac was expensive for a beer, but comparable with the least expensive wines typically found on a restaurant's list. Almanac initially sold its special release beers in 750 milliliter bottles, a size commonly used for wine. Fagan's design for the die-cut labels borrows from both wine and 19th century Scotch bottles. Almanac has released some beers that have been aged like wine in oak barrels and has promoted the idea that good beer has a good place at the dining table and is encouraging chefs to pair Almanac beer with their dishes. And the last little thing I'll say here, in January of 2013, the company announced the first 3 farm-to-barrel oak-aged beers sold in 375 milliliter bottles. The beers had been aged, some for more than a year, as part of a collection of some 250 barrels. The releases include Barrel Noir, a blend of Belgian-style dark ale aged for 2 months in bourbon barrels, and in American-style Imperial Stout. In early 2014, Almanac refocused its output on this category. By 2018, the opening of its own brewery, Almanac was best known for its oak-aged sours and farmhouse ales, while also brewing IPAs, lagers, and pilsners. So one thing I will say is what attracted me to Almanac from the very beginning was their sour beers. In my opinion, Almanac makes the best sour beers in the industry. Now, I know there's a lot of other breweries that I haven't tried in the Midwest and maybe a little bit northern, maybe in the East Coast. Maybe there's other sour or breweries that do sour beers that make really well done beers, but I've probably had 24, 30 of these Almanac sour beers, and there hasn't been one that hasn't been a absolute knock it out of the ballpark beer. And that is tough in a sour beer category when it's so easy to get a sour beer that is unbalanced, that's too acidic, that just is off when they're doing these things in barrels, and it's hard to redo it, right? A lot of these are one-off beers that they don't necessarily produce the same exact way every time. And I have an example of one of their bottles. They used to produce all their bottles in this, and if you're watching the show, this farm to barrel, and this is one example. This is I think I talked about this beer on the show. This is their Peach de Bretteville. And Chris, I don't like peach beers, right? I got this because Almanac has never let me down. And I love Brett beers. And so this was a sour beer. This was a sour along with a peach, along with Brettanomyces, that gave it just such a fantastic flavor and well balanced, no pukiness, no, like I felt like I'm, acid reflux or anything in my throat. Well done. And I just love it. And these are silkscreen bottles too. I've collected so many of these. The only thing that's different that they do between bottles is they put these little labels on the bottom that tells you what the beer is. But silkscreen, beautiful bottles. The only problem now is that I don't think they do bottles anymore. They do it all in cans. So now you get this nice, and they have some classy, the same artwork they use here on the bottle, they use on their cans. And so really classy artwork as well. So I I fell in love with Almanac because they're sour beers. I don't drink a lot of sour beers anymore because as I got older, it's harder for me to drink sour beers. I can drink one every so often and my stomach can still handle it.
Mhm.
But I fell in love with their sour beers. But guess what? They do more than just sours. They do a lot of varieties, and everything they do is fantastic. Their stouts, their lagers, their IPAs. Not a beer have I had out of Almanac that they didn't really do a fantastic job. So that is my favorite A brewery. Chris, have you had any Almanac beers?
Yeah, actually, it's funny that you were mentioning how that is your favorite sour beer brewery.
Yeah,
it's mine too.
Oh, there
Yeah.
we go.
Yeah, if I had to choose, one now, for those of you who haven't listened to previous shows, I'm not gonna say I hate it. I strongly dislike Brett.
Yeah.
I strongly dislike that horse blanket straw, mostly just because of the thought that it brings to my head. But no, I'm not a big
Boneyard,
fan.
the Boneyard.
I'm not a big fan of the beers.
Yeah.
But I've definitely had some of their barrel aged sours and some of their even their Brett beers that I've had, and I'm going, this
so
is a
well
start
done
in the right direction. It is, and it's one of those things where I remember when I first started checking into things on Untappd, and I started getting into the whole, liking craft beer. My buddy Art Warcheck told me, him and Art Warcheck is the beer buyer for one of our former local grocery stores. That's actually right near Kevin and Amanda Argour. But him and then one of the bartenders told me, he goes, look, you have to try the beer and you have to try to start picking out individual flavors in the beer. Like sit, take your time, check the flavors, and try not to go as all the flavors combined. You have to try to pick out those flavors individually. And doing it that way, I can very much appreciate those beers, even though I don't like beers like that. So with them being up there on that list, it's really cool to see those beers. I just never buy them, mostly because of, like you said, they're normally more expensive.
Yeah. They were $10 for this bottle when I first started buying them. Now they're like $13 for for a can of their beer. I mean, they are more expensive, but I just didn't want to buy a lot of them because 3.75 milliliters is it's
about 10 ounces.
Yeah, 11 ounces. It's a small amount for a big price, but and so I wouldn't buy every single one. I have to pick and choose because when you're paying $10 to $13 per small bottle, that's a lot per ounce. And so I had to really be choosy, and I wanted to pick them all up because I loved them. But yeah, it's a high price point, but well worth it. I never felt that I got ripped off for that high price. It's one of the few beers that I'm willing to pay the extra money for because I know I'm going to get high quality for.
Yeah, that's definitely true.
All right. Very quickly, the two honorable mentions in the A category for me personally, Anchorage Brewing out of Alaska. We've talked about Anchorage Brewing. I've had a few beers. They don't distribute down here very often. A lot of times I have to go to Washington to get the beer. So I haven't had a lot of their beers, but all the ones I've had, I've really enjoyed. But I don't have anything to say about them because they don't have any information on anywhere, right? You have to, it's like they don't really talk about themselves.
Right.
So it's hard to get information, but Anchorage Brewing makes some great beers. They do some sours. They do some big, heavy stouts. They do a bunch of different things. Artwork, the bottles in their artwork is fantastic. I save every Anchorage beer I get their bottles because they're fantastic. So that was one. And the second honorable mention for me, even though I haven't had a lot of their beers, it's just that the ones I've had and the beer style that I enjoy a lot, that I really like, one of my big bucket list breweries I want to go to, Allagash Brewing in Maine. I love Belgian style ales. I love the stuff that I've had from Allagash. And because I don't get to drink a lot of it, when I do get to drink it, I really enjoy it. And that's what I enjoy. I could have named Alchemist. I could have named other ones, but again, I've only had one Alchemist beer, Heady Topper.
Yeah, but isn't it The Alchemist?
It's but I'm going to say it's A. It's still,
yeah. I thought about that too, honestly.
But I can't really say that's one I would mention because I've only had one beer from them, and it was good, but it's not something that that I can really say that really speaks to me a lot. But yeah, those are my beers. Okay, Chris, I've talked enough. How about you? Where did you go with all the great A breweries you have in the Florida area? Did you pick a Florida beer for your brew?
Oh, and I'll admit there's one I didn't even think of. But I'm still. There's
probably a couple you didn't think of.
Well, no, there's one that I thought of and went, no, I'm definitely not putting that on the list. But there was one that I just thought of that I'm kind of surprised that I didn't, because I do like a lot of their things, but I really still like my choices.
Okay. Okay.
Now, you had said earlier when we were talking, you were surprised about my decisions. Why were you surprised about my choices?
So again, I'll just name the breweries. I was surprised that Arcane Ale Works.
That was the one that I just remembered.
And I was surprised that Angry Chair at least wasn't an honorable mention. Why were neither of those breweries at least honorable mentions for you?
So Arcane, honestly, it's just because I forgot. I totally forgot it. I was trying to figure out how do I find breweries that start with the letter A. I literally typed in on Google breweries starting with the letter A. And I got a great website to visit that gave me felt like thousands of breweries.
Yeah, there's a lot of A breweries.
But then I was looking at things like, what kind of different swag do I have? When I get stickers from good breweries, I put them on my guitar case, or I make magnets out of them and put them on my beer cooler. And I know one of them specifically stood out because it was on my guitar case. But Arcane, I'm sorry I didn't mention you guys, because they're definitely a good one if you want to check them out. Now, the second one that you mentioned, Denny, Angry Chair.
Yeah. What happened to them? Why are they falling out of grace?
It was interesting that it was my opinions were confirmed when I finally got to meet John and Kristen, when John and Kristen came to visit us in Tampa a couple of months ago.
Yeah.
And he said it so well. And he and I had a conversation about this. Like, their beers are good. No doubt about that. Their beers are good. But when people are going just absolutely nuts over these beers that, like Denny, when you and I split an Angry Chair beer, or I sent a beer home with, or I allegedly mailed a beer to you. You were like, I had to split it with a couple of people.
They're too big. Yeah.
They are just dense. They're just
the Russian interference.
And they are just super thick motor oil, like super sweet stouts. I mean, there's an Angry Chair beer in my fridge that I bought for a buddy of mine in Southern Florida that he was like, oh, if you can grab me a bottle of it, I'd really appreciate it. That I cannot drink by myself. There's no way I'm going to drink this beer by myself.
True.
And they have a very, if you go in there and it's not super busy. Now, let me step back a little bit. If they haven't completely gone over, they have moved into a new location that's bigger, that's going to offer them more space. But the location that they were in, Denny, their bar might have had 12, 15 seats at the actual bar, and then maybe another 20 seats inside the actual tasting room.
Super small.
And when you have a brewery that people are going, like, I consider them one of those breweries that people are like, I mean, we used to wait in line for their beers, get it in line at 6, 7 o'clock in the morning.
And beer festivals outside the brewery.
It's become too much of like a what I like to call a bro culture.
Yeah.
And it was the last couple times I've had any experiences there, and then John kind of solidified it for me when he was there. It was just, they were like, for lack of a better term, my shit don't stink kind of thing. Right. And I've heard some different opinions from other folks that I know that have tried their beers or have had experiences there. When if I'm going to Angry Chair, I'm going in to grab something. If I'm grabbing a bottle, or I'm going to have a beer or two and then just pay my tab and leave. But man, the experiences that I've heard some people have in there, I don't know if they're just too full of themselves or what, but it's that bro culture kind of turns me off of it. And normally when I'm in there, it's so flippin' crowded that it's not enjoyable. Like you got to like shimmy through people just to get in there. So fortunately, they're moving into a bigger space now.
Okay.
My other choices, though, my actual choices.
Let's talk about them.
Yeah. So my actual favorite brewery that I had that started with the letter A was Against the Grain Brewing out of Louisville, Kentucky. And what turned me on to these guys was their brown ale that we talk about a lot. The brown note. Okay. And I know with a lot of you guys that we talk to, whether it's in social media or on the show, that you guys are drawn to things like can art, like, this is pretty cool. Gourds Gone Wild, right? Like that's fun. It's, great for the holiday. We get can art, beer names, beer puns, that kind of stuff. That's what gets us to buy beer.
Yeah.
And Denny, I know you're a huge guy on beer names, like those puns and stuff. And brown note, the can art and the name itself totally sold me on it.
Yeah.
Totally sold me on it. And I remember when I ordered it, like, I was like, wow, the brown note, like the note that makes you supposedly poop your pants.
It's so childish, but it makes you laugh.
That's why I enjoy it, because here I will forever be 12 in my brain. But yeah, it's just one of those things that I tried and realized, wow, it's a really good beer. And then I've had a couple of their other beers. One of my favorites that I know, Jeff Seiler says brown note, best quote guy can art ever. Yeah. Sit your ass down.
Yeah.
Sit your ass down. Right. That beer, not only is it absolutely delicious, what a great name.
Yeah. I'm a sucker for good beer names, and if the beer is good inside, hey, it's a double win.
Well, I was looking up their website when I started finding out some information about them. They have some very interesting beer names coming out, however you want to look at it. They're simple, but they're a lot of fun. They've got a beer called Wiggity Woo. I have no idea what that's about. The other one, I believe it was Cluck Cluck Motherker. I mean, just all kinds of different stuff. And their can art is just, it's simple, complicated, but very involved, but it's so many things. And it just all around it. Just, I really love this brewery because they have a lot of fun, but they're cool. Like the picture on the Wiggity Woo, there's a guy not wearing a shirt. He's wearing a hat, glasses with a beard. He's got tattoos all over his body. And around his nipple, there is like little sunshine rays, and it says nippy underneath of his nipple. I mean, come on. All that kind of stuff. I love that kind of stuff. It's just hilarious and fun. And they're just being real to who they are. And then they make great beer on top of it. So I want to read a little bit about what was on their website about us, in their About Us section. So Against the Grain is in Louisville, Kentucky, and Louisville's craft beer scene in the 90s was grayer than Aunt Claudine's thinning hair. Every pale ale was a pale ale, every porter was a porter, and so on and so forth. It was different then, but truth be told, that's where the tale of Against the Grain begins. Jerry Nagy, Sam Cruz, Adam Watson, and Andrew Ott found themselves working at one of the grayest Louisville breweries of all time, doing what they loved, but not the way they wanted. Fed up and dissatisfied with the brewing status quo, they banded together and drew up a business plan on a yellow legal pad. It wasn't the best, but they found out early on that they had a knack for taking something shitty, this is their words, not mine, taking something shitty and making it the shiniest turd in all the land.
There you go.
This is why I like these guys. They have fun. They're not afraid to be themselves. More importantly, they found they had the drive collectively to make better beer. With determination, a few fart jokes, and a handful of investors, they opened the doors to Louisville's first brewer-owned and operated brewery in 2011, Against the Grain Brewery and Smokehouse. Now, their food looks phenomenal, too, by the way. The 15-barrel Victorian-style brewhouse and Southern-inspired smokehouse became a vessel for innovation. They invited color to the grayscale brewing culture and changed the way beer was viewed in Louisville. They brewed an array of diverse beers categorized by 6 main styles: session, hop, whim, malt, dark, and smoke. The categories ensured the beer would never be boring and they would never be bored. For the next 4 years, sleep was a luxury, showering a distant dream, and a balanced diet was a cracker with mustard. They championed the belief that you deserve more than the mainstream. You deserve quality beer with an irreverent, crude name, but also the merit of liquid to laugh in the face of naysayers who have a hard time saying fart, boob, and of course, nipple. They insisted and proved amazing beer could be fun, not stuffy or too proper for a rowdy time. By 2015, the culture of beer was growing, and the brew pub began to feel the growing pains. It was time to expand. The partners opened a 3-vessel, 30-barrel brew house 20 blocks away from the pub in downtown Louisville. The facility was to act as the production arm of Against the Grain. They increased production by 400% and began canning brands to adorn shelves around the world. Today, you can find Against the Grain in up to 43 states in the U.S., upwards of 25 countries around the world, and of course, right here at home in Louisville, Kentucky.
So, Chris, I mentioned I was surprised you didn't have the Florida breweries on there, but you don't know how happy it made me that this was your top choice. So thank you for choosing Against the Grain. I thought it was a great selection, and it makes me laugh. I wish I could get more of their beer here in town. I hope that we're one of the 43 states. I think I haven't seen any Against the Grain, but I'm hoping they come in, right? Come on, we got to be one of the 43. I don't want to be one of the 7. But great choice. Great choice.
Thank you. So I'm trying to see. Let's check Boise. Let's see what it says.
So while you do that, Mike Allen has some comments that he says, I don't think either of you have had much from Alvarado Street out of Monterey, California, but they are fantastic. And yes, I see that Mike checks into that and gives it high ratings. And no, I've never had. There's a lot of breweries in California that I just never have had that start with an A. And I hear good things from them, but I can't really talk about it because if you're local or you're able to get that beer because of whatever reason, and that's fantastic. But I mean, Almanac I can get a lot of Almanac here, and I love that. I love their beer. And Against the Grain, Chris can get, and I can get when I travel, and I enjoy that beer as well.
Well, I saw 4 of their beers when I was beer shopping the other day. They're, of course, Against Brown Note, Sit Your Ass Down. There was a light beer. It was called like Pool Boy or something like that. And then they had one called simply a beer. It's on the front of it. It's labeled as a super American premium lager, which I don't know why I didn't buy that. But.
So Jeff Seiler says, don't forget Pile of Face IPA, Kentucky Ride Sequin, and London Bailing Barley Wine. They are awesome.
Yeah. So it's just more of their beers that we need to get a hold of, because everything I've had from them has been spectacular. So yeah. But as far as honorable mentions, and especially with, guys, we've got over 8,000 breweries in the United States alone. We could have totally just picked some random breweries. All these breweries are breweries that I've had beer from personally. So I wanted that was one of the things that I looked at, Denny, and I was like, okay, I can't just make these up or just pull one because I like the hype that goes along with them. My honorable mentions, I had 2. Apparently I have 3 now because Arcane didn't make the list. So Arcane is definitely going to be in the honorable mentions list, but Anapi Brewing out of Algoma, Wisconsin. I was turned on to these guys actually by one of our listeners. No, actually before that.
Oh, before William Slimmer.
Dustin Hoffman.
Oh, okay.
I met him and his now wife in Asheville when Megan and I went out there a few years ago. He brought me some beers from Anapi, and I really enjoyed them. And then when they showed up, that that name showed up again when William was kind enough to send us olive oil with beer labels wrapped around them. Yeah, that one right there. That one.
Cherrywood.
Oh my
Oh my
that beer
gosh,
was
it's so good.
So everything I've had from them, I think I've had about 4 or 5 of their beers, and everything's just been just delicious. And then last but not least, I want to talk about another Florida brewery, Ardwolf Brewing Company in Jacksonville, Florida. Now,
Never heard of them. Never heard of them.
And it was one of those breweries that I knew nothing about. I found them at Hunapoo Day one year, and they had really cool stickers. Oh, the beer was really good too. Forgot about that part. The beer was really good too. And every time I see somebody going, well, what brewery should I hit in the Jacksonville area? Ardwolf is on that list. And the big ones are the big beers that I see from them a lot. What is it? There's a stout that I see a lot that I'm looking through their stuff right now, and I'm ill prepared. But the beers that I've had from them have all been stouts, and they've all just been just terrific beers. Super easy to drink, but also complex in the different flavors and just very enjoyable all around.
Mm-hmm. Nice. Yeah, the Anapi. I've only had one beer from them, but it was a 5 cap rated beer, and that again, if I ever come across Cherrywood Baltic style porter, again, I will buy a bunch of it because that beer is fantastic. I love that beer. So, hey, good choices. Although I never even heard of Ardwolf, but if I'm ever in Jacksonville, I've got to go and try them.
Yeah, well, there's a couple there. There's a couple there.
All right. Well, Chris, that is our brew buzz. That turned out to be quite a segment. I thought it was going to be a short segment. We actually made that very, entertaining and worthwhile. So
we do.
Of course, that's what we do. That's what we do. So let's go into our new and noteworthy. And since you just got done talking, Chris, let me go ahead and talk about my new and noteworthy. And I already mentioned that earlier in the show that I've been drinking a lot of fresh hop beers.
Yeah.
And so the first 2 beers I'm going to talk about are fresh hop beers. I got 3 beers. I went back to normal. Instead of doing 5, I went with 3. And the first one is from Fort George Brewery. And again, I talked about a Fort George Brewery beer last episode, which was a fresh hop one, which is a fresh IPA. Now I'm talking about their Fields of Green, which is their Strata wet hopped 2021 version of their wet hop. And I got to find this beer on my Untapped real quick so when I said here on Untapped, I gave this a 4.5 cap rating. I said the Strata is very present with a candy-like melon citrus fruity flavor. Not getting any traditional wet hop character, but the beer is great regardless. And that seems to be the key to a lot of the fresh hop beers. Is in the past, fresh hop beers were like super in your face, danky, grassy. Like you could tell that these are wet hop, fresh hop beers. And most of the ones that I had this year are very mellow in that. The only difference, the only one that wasn't like that for sure was the first Fort George Brewing one, the fresh IPA. That one was very strong, fresh hop character, but still the beer was fantastic. I loved it for just as it had the fresh hop character, but not bold, but great character, and 4.5 cap rating for that one. The next one is another wet hop beer from Mother Earth Brewing right here in the Napa, Boise area. It's their Wet Hop Dreams 2021 version. And this is the Sabro version. And I've mentioned a bunch that's my favorite hop right now is Sabro. Great flavor with some of the signature fresh hop flavor, solid IPA, and so flavorful, 4.5 cap rating. Obviously you can tell that I was enjoying these beers and I just didn't put a lot of thought into the description, but it's still good. I remember getting a lot of variety of hop character out of that Sabro, but I didn't put it in there. It's just typical Sabro hops, a little bit of coconut, a little bit of tropicalness, And then the last beer is another beer that my buddy Alex brought me last time he was here. And it's amazing that I I still have beers that he brought. I haven't drank them all. This is an interesting beer because it's a collaboration beer. It's Thornbridge Brewery out of England, UK, but it's a collab with Firestone Walker out of
California.
I was something Robles. I can't.
Paso Robles.
Paso Robles. Yeah, I was trying to remember maybe my fourth beer tonight. I probably should have cut back a little bit. Maybe 4 beers in one show is too much. But yeah, this is a collaboration with an English brew. So the beer was brewed in England with the collaboration of Firestone Walker. And it's called the Pondera American IPA. And I gave this a 4 cap rating. And I said it has a big, sweet, tropical fruit flavor in there. And I'm thinking it reminds me of kiwi fruit. Again, kiwi fruit is not a strong, bold flavor. It's like a more subtle, sweet, juicy character. Passion fruit, maybe it was passion fruit as well. Not the typical West Coast IPA I would expect. A good beer nonetheless. Thanks, Alex, for bringing this beer to me. 4 cap rating. Again, when I think of West Coast IPA, I think of citrus, pine, period, right? Those are the bold flavors I want to have in a West Coast IPA. But it wasn't a West Coast, it was American style IPA. So my mindset might have been a little bit off. Still, American IPA, very good. Just adding some of those New World hop characters that I also enjoy. And that's why I gave it a high rating. All right, Chris, how about you? What was your new and noteworthy beers?
So new and noteworthy beers for me. One was from right here in Tampa, from Cigar City. It was called Journeywork of the Stars. This was my one and very few 5 cap ratings that I give out throughout the year. But this one is part of their El Catador Club that they have a couple times a year. And the notes for this one, at least on Untapped, says journey to the interstellar intersection of wooden barrels, complex malt forward beer styles, and rich cacao nibs with this blended barrel aged creation. This is labeled as a strong ale. So this would be a barrel aged strong ale, and just simply a very, very good beer for this being a 13.4% beer. This did not taste like a 13% beer. Now, I did split it because I'm a responsible adult. So I got to share it. Tina and I split it, which was good because that would have been a whole lot of beer to drink. But just everything that I love in a strong ale, right? You get some of those, you get some of the booziness because this was with, it was blended with a couple of different barrels. Okay. It had some of those like stone fruit flavors in them. And it was just, I remember taking a sip of it and going, oh, wow, this is just phenomenal. And I took another sip and another sip and I was like, all right, I need to slow down a little bit and maybe just sip on this one. But that one was just phenomenal. So glad I got to try that one out. Gave that one a 5 cap rating.
Nice.
Next beer is out your way, Denny, from Fremont Brewing. Their Brew 5000.
Sweet. And
this was one of those beers that I got through Tavor that I was a little hesitant on getting, but it's your favorite. It's your favorite kind of barley wine, the English barley wine.
I do love an English barley wine.
And this one, I gave this beer I gave this beer 4.5 caps. The only reason it didn't get 5 because it was a little on the sweet side. Okay. But this was a English style barley wine ale aged in bourbon barrels. And the notes that they have for this is just, talks about how Fremont began as a dream in 2008. Hey, this is what we've been doing since then. But let's see where the notes, like every family, we've had our ups and downs, but we keep coming back together, knowing we are stronger together. In your hands is a special nod to you, a gift for now that will continue to give many years from now, should you have the patience to wait. Brew 5000, this English style barley wine, and it goes into the different hops and the English barley. It's been aged in 10 to 15-year-old single-use bourbon barrels for 16 months. It was wax capped. It was a 22-ounce bottle. I mean, it was a lot. It was, it even says in the notes that the flavor was high sweetness, slightly bitter, definitely lingering sweetness. But it worked together really well. It was nice because it was sweet, and then the balance of the booziness from the barrel and the sweetness, and then some of the oak flavors that you would get in it. It was like, brown sugar, oak, vanilla, all kinds of different flavors out of that one. And the last one was my 2500th
Oh, this was it, huh?
that I checked in the other night on Untapped.
Yeah.
Hoppin Frog Brewery out of Akron, Ohio. Their extended barrel aged DORIS. Now, barrel aged DORIS is one of my favorite beers. It was one of the first beers that I ever got into that I started liking those bourbon barrel flavors. Now, DORIS stands for Double Oatmeal Russian Imperial Stout, to give you an idea of what this type of beer is. Now, it's been extended aged. So I believe the notes I saw that it was aged for, this one was like 16 months or something like that too.
Wow. But
it was in bourbon barrels, and this had a ton of oak flavor to it. So the immediate taste, you get the sweetness of that imperial stout, and then it actually was dry. The finish was drier. There was no carbonation to it or anything, but there was definitely some earthy oak flavors, and then you get some vanilla to sit on top of that, which I really enjoyed. We were sitting out by a fire pit at our hotel the other night. We were just chit-chatting, also watching the Tampa Bay Lightning game, and just enjoying the time outside. So I was also drinking at my B cup because, when I travel, you have to take a B cup with you. It's only fair.
B cups, right?
Yeah. Whether it's an hour and a half down the road or somewhere else. But yeah, we always had our B cups to go along with it. But yeah, just a great beer. I'm so excited that I actually have a second one in my fridge because it was
nice.
Well, I saw that it was DORIS, and it was barrel aged DORIS. When I bought it, I was excited. I was like, okay, I'm just gonna get two of them.
Yeah.
I didn't realize it was like an extended barrel aged, which I'm still okay
adds extra price to it.
But, what's money? You can always make more money.
That's right.
You always make more money.
That's right. Well, those are great beers, Chris. There was one more beer, I think one right before you hit your 2500th beer. It's a brewery out of Tampa area. Starts with a C. Quincy or Quinn?
Oh, Kueni. Yeah.
Kueni. So is everything okay?
Yeah, everything's good.
Oh, you were someone come in and you chat with someone?
Yeah, give me just 1 second.
Yeah, 1 minute. All right, it's just me. Don't everyone leave, because Chris will be right back after this message. But while we're here, I'm going to talk to Chris about this brewery that you're back.
I am.
Okay, so yeah. Chris is back. So talk to me about this brewery, because I learned about this brewery in this book I'm going to talk about here in a minute.
Oh, did you?
Yeah. Okay. And I want to hear if you've had very much experience with them and their beers, and what you think of them.
So I don't think I've had a ton of them. I might have had 3.
So why not? Because they're in Tampa, right? Or outside of Tampa?
So they are in a town called Dunedin, which is actually I've had 3 of their beers. Mm-hmm. I've had 3 of their beers, and Dunedin is like about an hour from us. So
okay.
So that one, McGrady the Mild and Orange Trail Cream Ale. But I think when I was actually at the brewery back in 2017, there's a lot of breweries in that area. Mm-hmm. So you go to this one, and then you go a couple blocks down here, and that one.
You try a bunch of things. You don't want to drink too much at one, because you want to bounce around.
So all of my other check-ins were just, hey, I checked in this beer, no notes or ratings or anything. Okay. But I do remember the beers that I did have from them have always been really, really good. Plus, this beer that I had was a black IPA that I got from the pizza place down the street called Gasparilla Pizzeria.
That's right. That's right. It had that. So that was an interesting crowler you had. It had a twist top, right?
Yeah. I got 2 beers. the first beer I got was from that Edmunds Oast that
Mhm.
Jeff Seiler was drinking. I got their
the fresh. Yeah.
well, I didn't get that beer. I got a it was like an orange creamsicle IPA. And it's funny because it was labeled as a sour, but it was very much an IPA, unless they put something in there that made it a little different. And then I had, when we got the creamsicle, the crowler didn't seal completely, and I'm riding home and I hear this.
So yes.
I'm going, what is that noise? And I get home and there's like little bubbles popping out of the side. I was like, well,
I better drink this now.
Guess we got to drink this one first. So we had that with our pizza, and then we took this black IPA. We took it with us to Disney. So when we were sitting out by the fire, we had this one. But Kueni, again, everything that I've had from them has been really good.
Okay, so I only mentioned them because I never heard of them before. You never mentioned them ever in your when you talk about beers here on the show for years. And it was a brewery that their responses in this book were notable. And I was like, wow, I like this guy. I need to visit this brewery when I go to Florida. So that's why I was asking about it. So I'll talk about that in just a second. But we did have Jeff Seiler. He wanted to add some other notable A breweries on his list here.
Two of these were in contention for my list as well. His first two. Yeah.
One was in mine, and it's only the first one, Alesmith. I do enjoy Speedway Stout, but honestly, Speedway Stout's the only beer I've had from
That's why
them,
I didn't pick it.
Yep. I've had different variations of it, but it's the same beer, and I'm like, I don't know if I can really recommend a beer that I enjoy one type of style. So that's why I didn't do that one. He also says Alpine.
Yeah.
And Alpine in its day, I would agree. But I think in nowadays, it's not the same. The Alpine beers that have come since, 5-6 years ago are not the same beers, and I just don't enjoy them as much. So I couldn't put Alpine on my list as well. I'm not saying they don't have good beer. I'm just saying that, over the years, other breweries and other things have stepped up. He also mentions Avery, which Avery for me is a hit or miss. There's some beers I really enjoy, and some beers I just don't really dig that much. But hey, Avery is fine. And then Aslan. And now, is this Aslan that's in Virginia?
Yes.
Okay. So I never had any Aslan beers, but I have heard from John Ream, who's mentioned
from the Beer Fairy.
From the Beer Fairy, as well as Tom Joseph and other people around the Virginia area that have had Aslan that say it's very good. So I'll agree with that's one that I haven't had myself, but everything I've heard from people I trust says that they're fantastic. And he mentions Orange Starfish is his favorite there. He says Speedway Stout for Alesmith, pure hoppiness. I do remember I've had pure hoppiness, and that is a good one.
Nelson.
Avery, though, I have never had the Maharaja. I have had the Old Jubilation, and of course Avery does a brown ale. Yeah, the Rumpkin. Oh, I'll say that the Rumpkin is fantastic. I do like Rumpkin. The only one of the few pumpkin beers I actually appreciate is Rumpkin.
One other one that was on that no one talked about either, which I'm still 75% sure on this decision. Adroit Theory there.
So I thought that might have been your list too, because you've had a lot of beers from them. I've only had a few, and I've enjoyed the beers I've had, but they didn't stand out above everything else. But again, I've had a couple beers. I'm like, yeah, they're okay. I mean, but I know you've had a lot of beers from them, so I thought they might have been your list as well.
Yeah, and again, it's stuff I bought based on can art.
Yeah, they have some very dark looking can art.
So the can art was really cool. And then I actually, when Chad Lamassa went out and visited them, he goes, honestly, I was kind of underwhelmed. He goes, I'm so I get their cans of stuff and their can art is amazing. The beer's really good. And the tap room was kind of underwhelming.
Yeah, that's true. If you're gonna be that out there with your artwork and everything, come on, make the experience when they come visit you just as fantastic. I agree. Okay, Chris, Well, let's finish this show off. I didn't talk about this last episode. We are running. I ideally like to end right now at 1 hour and 30 minutes, but I want to talk about this book review real quick. I won't spend too much time on it. So I was as a PR thing, and I didn't even request it. They sent it to us and said, "Hey, would you please review our book? Here's a free copy of the first volume of 3 volumes. I hope you enjoy." And the book is called "One More Beer, Please," by John Nelson. And let me read what was written in the promo that was sent to us through our email. It says, "Does the thought of a freshly hopped local IPA send chills down your spine? Perhaps you crave a deliciously simple ice cold Pilsner crafted to perfection? As a beer geek, you know we live in the undisputed best moment in history. The craft of brewing beer has never seen more innovation and growth, yet for the purest of the selection of traditional old world ales has never been greater. This one-of-a-kind book asks breweries some poignant questions about their operations, products, and their take on the industry and what's coming next. In One More Beer, Please, over 100 breweries answer questions like, what is the actual difference between a porter and a stout? How do you open a brewery and what does it cost? Who in the industry is doing it best? What beers do brewers actually drink? Do IPAs still matter? And so much more. The people behind these companies are leaders and trailblazers. Get to know more about American brewers and what makes them some of the greatest job creators and innovators on the planet. So basically, I just want to kind of go over, I read the entire book. It's about 470 pages or so. It's not like full prose. It's in a style that it basically takes, it has the brewery and then it takes these questions and answers the questions. So here's my notes. It's a 3-book series. Each book contains 100 breweries. I only got the first volume, so I got to look at the first 100 breweries. The first book has the breweries with all the numbers that answered, that went ahead and submitted their answers to the form, as well as through the letter D. So we had A through D. So if you think about it, Chris and I just talked about all the A's, and there must have been like 1,000 of them. And so we went through numbers and through D in 100 breweries. So not a lot of breweries responded back in that range to his requests for information. So I need to be honest here. This book is not really an authored book, meaning that the author didn't go and do the research and then write the prose according to what was fed back to him. He basically took a collection of responses from a Google form. I believe what he did is he made a Google form and he sent out a link to 8,600 and whatever breweries. Maybe not all at the same time. Maybe it was in segments. Maybe he did a third of the time. Who knows how he did it? But he sent a Google form out and had him, hey, could you please go through my survey and answer these questions? And he had, at first it looks like he had maybe 6 or 7, maybe 10 questions, and whatever breweries wrote back, he would then use those responses and put them into the book. So he didn't. Here's the kicker, right? He didn't do any editing. It's pretty much just the raw responses from what was sent back, including all the poor editing, the poor spelling, the all caps responses. Who wants an angry text from somebody, right? Yeah. And that's what you're reading. He put all caps, in some of these. There's 2 of them, and I was just shocked that there's got to be some editing, right? Because people don't want to be yelled at when they're reading a thing, and it just seemed kind of odd. And people like myself, I'm not the best grammar speller, but those things stick out when you're reading, right?
Yeah.
And if something is obviously wrongly spelled or used incorrectly or missing, so the context can't be understood, I understand he wanted to keep it in the same tone as what the person who was responding wanted it, but come on, there's got to be a little bit of editing done, at least to make it better, right?
I think that would be kind of tough, because if this was, John Smith at the at Acme Brewery or whatever brewery it was, he'd want to make sure that it was quoted appropriately.
Yeah. And again, when you're writing stuff like in a form, a lot of times the editing is not available, right? You don't have a spell check. You don't have you're writing it through and answering through, and you're expecting that maybe if I have something wrong, that maybe it'll get corrected, but that it wasn't. A small little tick. I'm just kind of picking out the things that I said. And again, I read through the entire book. I didn't just skim. I read everything. So this is coming from my personal review of this. The questions and responses are relatively the same throughout. Now, I did see that some of the questions were changed up as some breweries responded. I'm guessing what happened is he initially released certain questions, and from the responses he was getting, he saw that, maybe I could change this up a little bit to add more context, because again, he's not asking questions and then seeing the responses and going back and getting more responses. He's sending out a one-time form, and he did make some changes that I think were definitely good. But the problem is that those changes weren't made across the board. It was interjected here and there. So there's a little bit of change up, but for the most part, it's just, one-sided questions. You ask a question, you get a response. There's no feedback.
Right.
And honestly, I would have liked to have seen more of an interview style where he could dive back into digging into more deeper to some of these answers, right? Because they were kind of thorough, but some were kind of thorough, but you know what, you feel like, oh, I've got more that I think that they could tell us, and we didn't get that. I would have also, honestly, I think adding 100 breweries without a lot of context is not as good as focusing on 20 breweries that give you a real solid amount of context, in my opinion. There are also some breweries that were included in this 100 breweries that really didn't take the survey to heart, right? They either wrote a single word, they wrote sarcastic responses, or they wrote sparse response, at all. In my opinion, these breweries should not have been included because their feedback doesn't provide any useful insight, right? If a brewery isn't wanting to really put the effort in, then don't include them. I mean, don't just put stuff there to fill a book, right? I mean, I'm sure you could have waited a little bit longer and got maybe some more better feedback from breweries that were a little bit delayed in getting back. So that put me off. Every time I read a brewery that didn't add anything to the context of the book, I just thought, why? Why do that? It doesn't make any sense. The other thing is, and again, this goes back to why include this if it's not going to add any, real context, is there was a couple of wineries that were put in this book because they do have beer, but they're only brewing like a few gallons a year to appease those husbands or people that are going there with other people that like wine and they don't like wine, and they can give them a beer offering. But nobody that cares about craft beer cares about those type of breweries, right? Nobody wants to hear about a winery that has a few gallons of beer. It just felt like that was out of place. Again, my opinion. Let's see. There are some breweries that included that honestly I will never go get a beer from, because reading the responses, the tone of their messages relays the problem of some of the 8,000 plus breweries that are in business for the wrong reasons. I think, Chris, you hinted at it, how Angry Chair, I think Angry Chair is in it for the right reasons, but they become so big, their egos are bloated, and it's more of a bro, it's turned into a bro thing. I don't want that bro culture, right? I want everyone invited. I want to have a good experience. I don't want to have that type of thing. And I got some of that some of the brewery responses kind of told me that, what, you just let me know that I don't ever want to visit your brewery or drink any of the beer from your brewery, because you guys are a bunch of damn assholes. And I don't want to spend my money on you. So that was good. That's a good thing. That at least I got to see some assholes.
Yeah. But I can't wait to solidify that voice clip.
Yeah.
But that's the whole reason, Denny, that you started Tap the Craft, right? You want to be able to go into a place, especially as a new person, and go, I have no idea what I'm looking at on this menu. where do I start kind of thing, right? You want to have that what we talk about, our craft beer journey all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I know, if not everybody, just about everybody has walked into a brewery and has probably felt that way in some form or fashion, where they're just like, do they even want me to be here?
Yeah.
Or,
Yeah.
The person behind the bar, when I've done like secret shops at breweries and stuff, there's a part of it when they're telling me, they're like, hey, engage the person in conversation, start small talk with them. And I've totally had people where I'll have a full-blown conversation with them for the whole time that I'm there, for an hour or two. And it's easy to talk to people. And then there's some folks where it's like you're pulling teeth, and I'm like, so you like French fries or something like,
if it's all about the experience. It's all about, don't make me come to you and drag out the beer experience. I'm there. I want to feel the experience, right? You make me feel important, make me understand why I'm drinking your beer and why. I mean, when that happens, it's a magical experience and really good. So there, I'll tell you that I'm kind of being a downer on what I read, but I'm just being honest with what I read from a typical, from an experienced beer drinker, an experienced beer connoisseur, enthusiast, whatever you want to call me, that's seen a lot of stuff over the years, and how I took the book. But there is some good stuff in this book. I'm not saying it's all bad. I'm saying that probably about 15 brewers in this book really provided some very thoughtful, very good insight into different aspects of the craft beer industry, of getting started in craft brewing, and how to become successful, and guide you in the mistakes that they made that they don't want other people to make. And that's the key. Is I honestly think that if he would have focused on quality instead of quantity in this book, it would have been a really good book. And that 15% made it worthwhile, that I didn't feel like I wasted a week of reading this, because that 15% really stuck with me. Not only did I enjoy those 15 breweries that really put the effort in, I gained a respect for breweries I never heard of that now are on my bucket list of breweries that I want to go and reach out to, either go visit myself or reach out to do interviews, because I want to hear more of their story, because these guys really inspired me to want to understand how they came from. So there is good parts of the book, but again, 15% is a small section. It was quantity over quality never wins, right? It never wins.
And it sounds like with specifically too, it could have been just, hey, let's see if they fill out this form, and the information we get, we can quick publish a book and see what we can. Because it sounds like let's quick publish a book, put a link out there, and see if we can make some passive income on it.
Yeah. It's just it was just a side thing that wasn't really, I don't think there's a lot of effort put in, is the problem, right? There's no editing, right? So you just copy paste. How hard is that?
Can you remember?
You and I could do that if we really wanted to.
Can you remember any of the breweries that really took the time and put some good answers into those questions?
That one from Tampa was one. There's and honestly, the one Wisconsin had a couple. I need to go back and revisit. Wisconsin, North Dakota, like small towns, really put an effort into to putting in some really good, solid information. Another one, Boring Brewing, out of the small town in Oregon. Man, the guy he's a small brewer, but I really felt connected to his responses, and I want to get connected with him and either visit his brewery and do an interview on site when I get back to Oregon. He's just south of where my mom lives, so I could probably go down there and arrange. And it's a small little outfit, but man, that was the first one of the book. I got to Boring, right?
Mm-hmm.
I went through all the numbers, all the A's, and got to boring before I hit my first one that really stuck with me that said, wow, this is fantastic. And like I said, there's Wisconsin had a couple, and North Dakota. It was really honestly, the smaller breweries, craft beer states that really had the best input. I thought were really cool. And that had been doing it for a long time, and nobody, never even heard of these breweries, right?
Sure.
But they've been small town brewers for 15 years and having some good content. So I don't want to be too long here. I've already talked too long, but basically it's not that expensive of a book. Each volume is $4 a piece, electronic, or you can buy the 3 volume for $10. So you're not being put out by too much money. If you wanted to go ahead and try this, go ahead. This book, in my conclusion, this book series is for those who are interested in opening a brewery in the U.S. and want to weigh the pros and cons, get some insight from up to 300, breweries. I'm not going to say you're going to get good insight from all of them, but you will be able to pull stuff from them.
You'll get insight.
Yeah, you'll get insight. But for the typical craft beer enthusiast like myself, I really cannot recommend this series unless you're just curious. Again, $10 is nothing. That's 2 lattes if you buy expensive coffees, right? Or one lunch. If you want to get insight, I think 300 breweries can give you some insight. So it's not a waste of total money, but it's not one of the books that I've read that I really enjoyed and can recommend that you need to read this book. And again, if you can, if you're happy enough picking out the good stuff and ignoring the bad, then it's fine. And what I found that I would do is I didn't care about how many beers brewers are drinking per day. I didn't care about what foods go best with craft beer. I didn't care about how much after so long, I didn't care about how much it costs to open a brewery, because you know what? You're not going to get your answers from there, because it changes with every place you live. There's no one answer, right?
Mm-hmm.
Some say you can do it for 40 grand, and some say it costs 4 million.
Yeah.
What the hell? 40 grand to 4 million? How can you make any sense of that, right? So some of this stuff isn't going to be crystal clear to you, but I dove in and really focused on the things of, that were, talking about how they go about, expanding their brand and, some other key things. I can't remember off the top of my head right now, but there's some good stuff in there. You'll pick out the stuff that you want to read more about. You get tired of reading about the difference between porter and stout, because really the only difference between porter and stout tends to be whether you use malted barley or roasted barley. That's the difference, right? Okay. Now we're done. Let's go on. Okay. So to finish this off, as I mentioned, I did read the complete first book. And I was pretty much about 15 breweries. I really got some insight that I cared about. And again, there's some breweries that I never even heard before that really impressed me, and now I want to go ahead and visit them or interview them. And again, if you are, I personally, I'm done with the first volume. I don't think I'll spend the $8 to go for the other ones. Although I am curious to see if John responded to the questions, and Trek has some feedback in there. But I got to D, right? So there's a lot of breweries in between that could be there that I'd be interested in. So that's my take on this book. It's on Amazon. It's on a number of different other sites electronically, and I think there might be a hardback too, but just go for electronic version, and I think would be good. Okay. All right, Chris, let's finish this show out because we're at 2 hours. Who do you want to give a raise a glass to tonight?
So I'd love to raise a glass to my buddy Manny Velez. He turned 38 whole years old yesterday. And want to raise a glass to him. Feliz cumpleaños, amigo, and cheers to many more.
Yeah, cheers to you, Manny.
And Denny, who would you like to raise a glass to?
Okay, quickly to our Patreon toast tonight goes to Mark Church out of Ohio, there next to Trek Brewing. Cheers to you, Mark. Thank you for being a Patreon supporter. And then didn't know I was going to be so long-winded this show, but you read off a bunch of untapped stuff, right? And in the last 4 weeks, I just have to raise my glass and cheers to all of our great listeners who have tagged me in their Untapped check-ins, commented on my check-ins or whatever in the last 4 weeks. Tara Carlson, Jim Kudzel, William Slimmer, Eric Gronley, Florida Steve, Will Sinclair, Tom Byrne, Jeff Seiler, Kyle Lilly, Challen Massa, Johan Halberg, and Matt Knight. Thank you for reaching out, interacting with me on Untapped. I really appreciate it. And cheers to you guys. And of course, being a former serviceman, I always want to raise my glass and thank all those who have served and who are currently serving in the U.S. military services, protecting our freedoms. Thank you for your service, and I hope you're able to return safely back to your families soon. And Chris, why don't you go ahead and give a toast to our sponsor?
Certainly. At the forefront of the craft beer movement, Brewer Shirts was one of the first to create apparel that celebrates the art of brewing and the love of fine beer. Never too trendy, always comfortable, and offering affordable quality, they screen print their gear by hand in their studio using eco-friendly inks, materials, and processes. Visit their online store at brewershirts.com and use the coupon code TAPTHECRAFT2020 to receive 15% off full-priced items.
All right, Chris, do you want to wait till our next episode to give people another chance to use our voicemail number and win $20 to Brewer Shirts?
Yes, I think that would be a wonderful idea. So if you guys want to win a $20 gift card to Brewer Shirts, make sure you call and leave us a voicemail. It's at 208-536-3359, 208-536-3359. And if you can't remember that, like Denny and I can never, because it's literally sitting right here on my screen, 208-53 oddly ODDLY. Type those letters into your phone and it'll get you to us. You should save that in your contacts anyway. Like
that's right.
Come on.
Just call us. Yeah, we love to hear from you. We love you. All right. And you can find the beers and links to articles mentioned on the show in our show notes located on the show post at tapthecraft.com. And if you'd like to follow us on social media, I can be found on Twitter, Instagram, and Untapped at Loose Screw. And Chris, how can our listeners follow you?
Absolutely never on Twitter at Chris_McKenzie82, or you can always find me on Untapped and Instagram at MCK1345. And of course, you can always interact with us at anything social at Tap the Craft.
All right. It is last call. It's time to bring the show to a close. We want to thank you for downloading and listening. We ask you to please tell a friend, and of course, subscribe on all those podcast apps. I'm not going to list them all.
Yeah.
And of course, as a reminder, we release a new show every 2 weeks. Now go out there and spread the good word of craft beer.
Cheers.
Cheers.